PJNet Live on Tuesday night. It is 9 o'clock here on the East Coast. We have Jake McCandless, his first appearance on PJNet Live. He is standing by. Our bumper is rolling. Chat room is populated and vibrant, so we will switch to Studio 6 in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to PJNet Live Tuesday night. It has already been a great week. Last night we got off to a great start, and we have transported the PJNet Eagle's Nest studio to the balmy beaches of Florida, which I call home. And folks, I have my t-shirt on. I do not have shoes and socks on. I'm barefoot. It is toasty warm here in the great state of Florida. It got down to 40 degrees. We're going to close our schools. Folks, wherever you are, I'm sure you're cold, but thank you. We promise to bring you warmth. We promise to bring you the love of Christ right here on PJNet Live. If you're watching this live on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook, welcome. If you watch this later, it's recorded. Glad to have you, but a special welcome goes out to those of us in our live chat room at patriotjournalist.com. And the reason that they have congregated here is for the first time ever on PJNet Live, we have Jake McCandless, who is a friend of Becky Lindsay and a friend of Del. You got friends everywhere, don't you? Well, Jake seems to be a little tongue-tied at the moment. He's kind of frozen up, and this has happened before. So here's what we're going to do, okay? We're going to reestablish our connection to Jake. So give me a moment, and we will kind of bump him off, and he'll rejoin us, hopefully. No, that didn't work. So what do you want to talk about, folks? Some updates on PJNet Live while we try to reestablish the connection. First of all, I want to say hello to the folks in the PJNet chat room. I see that Becky Lindsay is here. Shout out, tip of the hat to Becky Lindsay, who made the contact with Jake McCandless. And he hopefully will actually be here tonight. It's funny, we did a dry run this morning. We were in the studio for some, 2 minutes. So let me try something a little bit different while I bring you up to date on that. And there we go. Yeah, well, that's not working now, is it? Enjoy the show, folks. I wish I could be a little bit more entertaining, but I am actually producing this live as we talk. And for some reason, we have kind of lost Jake McCandless. Rachel Colby here in our chat room. Ben Cooper, good to see you again. I got to check out Ben's author page today. And now we have reconnected with Jake, and all I see is a black rectangle. I do not hear him. I do not see him. So give me a moment, folks, and we will try this again. I'm going to just keep kind of bumping him off. Maybe he'll rejoin. J.D. Wininger. Excuse me a moment. Here, I'll kind of check this out. I'm going to communicate with Jake real quick. Well, I certainly hope that you enjoyed that more than I did. If you enjoyed that at all, Jake.
Well, it was that beach picture, you know. You had that beach up there. I just had to go. I had to leave. I had to leave Arkansas and go to Florida.
Oh, Jake. I was checking out your. Well, first of all, I had some contacts that know you. I do a lot of recon before we let preachers on here, particularly. You know, we don't. Our general
That,
principle is
that's
we
a
don't do.
wise move. Yeah.
And I'm trying to find something interesting to talk about. So
Well, may
um,
have some trouble on my end.
I was going to say I came up blank. Could you help me out? And but no, seriously, 2 days ago, an epic event. Just 2 days ago, a new launch or relaunch. It was epic. You don't remember? It was epic. It truly was.
It
You don't.
was. Our
You're
connection's still okay. Here,
okay.
yes. Yeah. No. So yeah, I'm part of pastoring a church that replanted. Been there since the '70s. Went through some tough times, dwindled near closing, and had the opportunity to come in, and we really worked through the culture of our church and restarted with a few of the core from the past. And so we launched. Had a big Sunday last Sunday. So yeah, that was an epic day. The name of it's Epic Church, NWA, Northwest Arkansas. And so yeah, so it was epic.
Okay. When you say relaunch, the church was failing, or just fading, eroding. What are you doing differently?
Really, the whole thought process. I mean, really, from the beginning, uh, it'd been stagnant. Hadn't really connected in the community, and so just working through. We went through a program called Activate, which is a program that just encourages churches to revitalize and those things. And it recommended a resource, Tom Rainer's Autopsy of a Deceased Church. So we went through,
Mhm.
spent 6 weeks as a church looking at why churches die, and went through and evaluated where we were on that, and we were and a lot of those categories could categorize us. Actually, let me back before that. We had a time where we were down to just a handful, and we had a decision to make. And so I laid it out: do we sell? Do we give the building to another church, or do we put in the hard work and do it? And to a person, everybody committed to do the hard work, and that really what was missing was the effort there. And so then we had a session, we called it a dream session. We pulled out a whiteboard and during the service and just said, okay, if you could dream a dream for the Lord, for this church, for this community, what would you do? And we listed that. And then we got into, and we went through a study autopsy of a deceased church, looking at why churches do die, why they close, evaluated ourselves. Then we went through another Tom Rainer book, Becoming a Welcoming Church, and just talked about, receiving guests, reaching out, and those things. And then went through a study that I've written called Beyond the Status Quo, and looked at, it's not even a church that's friendly, that's welcoming, that is reaching out. It's still not the church we see in Acts. And so how do we get to be that church that we see in the book of Acts? And so really went just through that process and worked through it. And really, I think just our whole thought process of how church is done is in that way, and how we treat people when they come in, and how we reach out. And so we launched. So this launch team met for several months. Every person to a person put in the hard work, and had a great first Sunday. I guess that's last Sunday.
It was just 2 days ago. Three.
Right.
Whatever. Churches. You referred to the Book of Acts, and I get. We study it at the academic level, but yet when we actually program our activities, we stray from that, and there's a cost.
It is, because it's not about programs. It's about the people, and it's about just we've taken on the spectator mindset, the seeker friendly mindset, and has really shifted us away from what we see in the Book of Acts.
Credit to this goes to a guest we had on recently. I want to say it was Gallagher. It might. Anyway, one of our guests recently. We were just talking off the air, and he said that if he asked people to show him a picture of their church, what do you think they would show you? And I think we all know the answer. would
Well, they
be
show you the
the building.
picture. They would show you what it looked like. The building. Yeah. And if you ask them, they're going to tell you, oh, well, we added on here, we built this then. They're going to talk about the building or a program.
Hmm.
But yeah, the picture would have to be the outside building is probably what you'd see.
Yeah. Where if Jesus were to show you that, he would show you the people in it. The studio has you framed up a little bit smaller than your camera is shooting you, but your logo on your shirt is that of Stand Firm Ministries. Now, folks, if you have not been there, well, one, you didn't do your homework. You came here unprepared, and we will have a pop quiz later on. But
Oh no.
standfirmministries.com is your heartthrob. Tell us what that involves.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to really 2012, 2014, 2012. Or 2011, we had our daughter, and my wife was working. I was pastoring, and we felt like she needed to stay home, and so I was like, how can I make extra money? And so I took on a paper route at night. So pastor by day, paperboy by night. And I think when I did taxes that year, I netted like $9 after I tore up vehicles and all of that stuff. And so I thought, well, I've always felt called to write, so I'm gonna do that, and that would just make the difference. We become millionaires, and that was a crazy venture, but the Lord used it to push me, and so I put together a team to hold me accountable to write, and I had all these ideas of things I wanted to write, things I felt I needed to write, and at the time I was preaching through a series, and I really have no idea how I got there. Normally I can really go back and really trace the genesis, the path that got me to whatever sermon series it was. But I was preaching what I call overlooked prophetic verses, which are verses that we know, but we don't really think of them in terms of being prophetic. And one of them is Matthew 24:10, that many will turn away. Others, such as what we read about in 2 Peter 3, the people will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, all those things, they're prophetic. They're just as we read verses about the Antichrist and all that stuff. These tell us how we're going to be morally and ethically at the end of the age. And in that process, that verse that many would turn away just really can begin to convict me and weigh on me. And I'm looking out at my congregation and I'm asking the question, have I prepared them enough? And then I start looking at stats, and I'm not prophetically, I don't think we're to the point that the scripture's talking about. But in 2015, if you take the Barna research and you take the census, U.S. Census information, and work through that together, do the math there, was 42 million people who would check the box. Yes, I'm a Christian. Yes, I once attended church, and then check no longer they hadn't. And so in many cases, it's maybe just leaving church, but often it was also leaving the faith altogether. It just became convicted by that, and just felt like there was a message we weren't saying enough. And so that launched out into the Stand Firm Ministries. Did that full time just recently with this launching this church locally. I'm doing that, but still very involved with Stand Firm, getting the message out however I can to hold on that your faith is worth it, even though it's a challenge. It's worth it, and it's a reality that each day our faith is going to be challenged.
Well, I find it interesting, and we didn't talk about this, so this will be very organic, spontaneous. In the New Testament, we're often, instructed to stand firm, stand firm, stand firm, and in some men's ministry meetings that I've gone to, we've kind of, looked at that and filleted out. It doesn't say go on the offense. It doesn't say go after the enemy. It says stand firm. And there's some interesting theological implications on that. I'll share some, but I wanted to get your take on it first, since stand firm is so much a part of your life.
Yeah, I mean, the implications go deep. They go into salvation, eternal security. I mean, all of those aspects theologically, but just at a minimum, something we all, because I know your listeners, I know it, everybody coming from different backgrounds, different denominations, different takes, especially in regards to salvation and the assurance of salvation, the eternal security, all that stuff, but which is some very important, very vital. But at the minimum, I think you can boil it down and say, when we turn away, when we stumble, we're found not faithful. And the desire for every believer should be to hear the words, well done, my good and faithful servant. And as you said, it's almost a defensive position when we say stand firm. But if you take the parable of the talents, or there in Luke, the parable of the 10 minas, you find those. The one who was defensive in the parable of the talents is the one who just went and buried and hid his one talent, and didn't use it. He angered
Mm-hmm.
the master, and he's thrown into how hell is described. He's punished. In the 10 mina one, he's allowed to go into the kingdom, but he's angered the Lord. He's angered the king. And so I think there's also an offensive aspect to this, that we're on the defense. I use the word being a spiritual prepper. We're preparing for the challenges that are going to come. But then the other side, a spiritual warrior that's marching on and doing what we're called to do.
Some of the commentary on the topic stand firm, and we also tie this to the full armor, citation in Ephesians chapter 6. The weaponry, or the elements described in the full armor text, are defensive weapons. They are not offensive weapons. And you might say, well, wait a minute, how about the sword? That's an offensive weapon. Well, actually, the original word was gladius, which is a dagger, made for hand-to-hand combat once the defensive perimeter had broken down. Blah, blah. The take is this, Jake, that we kind of concluded, is that we've already won. We are saved. We're here. We've got work to do, but we've already won. We're just running the clock out. All we're doing is advancing the kingdom. We're passing through. Our bodies are like a tent, I think Paul describes. Yes. And so stand firm to me means we're standing firm on the truth. I do not feel called. And I guess some people do. So I need not to be too harsh, but I see people sometimes going on offense, going on the attack as if they are waging the battle. If we're waging the battle, we've lost.
Right. Right, yeah, it's definitely not on our own strength, as you said. We're just carrying out we're letting the Lord work through us. And I get a lot of pushback with the stand firm aspect, because we do read in Scripture that, when we come upon trials, the Lord will give us what we need to say at that time, will give us what we need. And we know that. We know when we go through difficulty, He raises the grace up, He raises the strength up, and gives us what we need. But there's a great story of Corrie ten Boom. The family was involved in the in smuggling and hiding Jews during the Holocaust there in Denmark, and moving them further out. And she was sharing her fear with her father about what if they get caught, what happens. And he tells a story of he asked her, when is it when we go to Amsterdam that I give you the ticket for the train? She says, when we're at the train station, right before we're going to board. And he said, exactly. That's how the Lord is. He'll give you what you need. But the thing is, she had to be there with the Father, I always get that as a defense. Jake, you don't have to worry about that, because the Lord's going to give us what we need. Absolutely. He is, and he does. There's no way we can even get ourselves ready for that. But if we're not with the Father when the trials come, we're way out in left field, that's a different story. And I think we need to realize that.
Well, and throughout the Bible, God, performs miraculous works. But think of Jesus when He healed people. He could have just spoken and they would have been healed, but He never did that.
Yeah.
He always required some act.
Test our faith, doesn't He?
Well, and He required a volitional act.
Yes.
And in the Old Testament, Gideon, I study military stuff, and it's like, blow your horn and crush a clay pot. Not exactly what I would call sound military strategy, but Jake, we're going to go a few extra minutes because we had a connection problem. I hope that Dell will be understanding and come in a little bit late. You've got a lot going on. You've just launched or relaunched a new church. You've been involved in Stand Firm Ministries, but you also write.
Yeah, I keep the candle burning, I guess you could say. Is this where I get to show the book? Is this is the book
plug? Yeah, this is.
I didn't want to miss my part.
Yeah, I wanted to wait till we got to the end, and didn't have any time.
So my first book, Spiritual Prepper, which always gets a kick out of the cover, and it's not as drastic as the cover looks like, but it's that whole message of their challenges coming. and it just each chapter walks through the different challenges we face now. It's not necessarily so much in the future, and then in the latest book, a devotional, which just really picks up from where that is, called Invincible, and it's because one of the arguments that I have, if we're going to prepare to face challenges and to remain faithful through those, uh, we need to build up our confidence in God, our faith in God, and so it just goes through 40 Bible stories of where God took care of His people, and just a reminder that He calls us to something. He's going to take care of us. He's going to provide. He's going to protect. He's going to do the impossible.
Well, I agree. I've checked out the resume of Jesus's chosen 12. And I would have summarily dismissed all of them. I would not have hired any of them.
That's right.
And when you look in the Old Testament, you've got very defective characters. In the Old Testament, God uses a talking jackass. There's hope for everybody. It's now before we leave, just on a personal level or personal note, I see behind you a lot of racks. There's got to be a story there.
Well, there's tons of stories.
We don't have tons of time, but
yeah, no, we don't. And probably the favorite. I know some of your viewers are getting in trouble with that, but I think usually I have a backdrop in front of me when I do it, if I do something like this. But I felt like tonight it's about being raw. It's about who we are, and so yeah, outdoors is a big part of my life. My favorite's the bear. I think you can just see the bottom of it there. But it really goes back to connection with my dad, my grandfather. Just something we grew up. I grew up being outdoors with them, and it really. Me and my dad, we live like 6 hours apart now, and so it's a way we can still connect. Meet up a few times a year and get out in the outdoors and get away. And so yeah, it's something special to me. Don't get to it enough, but I love to do it.
I don't hunt much more, but I have such fond memories. Me and my dad, and that's part of that rite of passage, for a teenage boy, young boy, to be given a gun, and trusted with it and shown how to be it was really good and just very fond memories. And that's kind of, my father's gone to be with the Lord now, and I hope that others have fond memories of me. But Jake, I wish we had a little bit more time. Sorry we had those connect. We were here doing this morning for almost 2 hours without a glitch.
Perfect. Great conversation, no problems, no hiccups. It's when you deal with tech, it always seems like the devil's in the tech, right?
Well, I was literally saying sometimes I wonder if because he is a spirit, he does have supernatural powers. And I wonder sometimes, do we have an enemy that's trying to keep us from doing things, So, but Jake, hey, thanks for sharing with us. Now, folks, if you have not been to, I'm going to put the website up here one more time because we're going to have to dismiss Jake in just a moment because Del Didway's on his way in. But if you have not been to standfirmministries.com, I urge you to go there and find out more about Jake McCandless. Thank you again, Becky, for connecting us with Jake. Jake, thanks for sharing with us tonight. It's been great. Maybe we'll do this again sometime and not have technical problems.
Absolutely. Well, I'd love to if we get the opportunity. Thank you for what you do. You've got great people on. Just keep it up.
Thank you, Jake. Appreciate it, brother. All right, quickly, we are going to start the second half of PJNet Live in just moments. We will have Del Didway. Thank you, all of you in the chat room. I'm trying to read the chat, but it gets crazy. I have to do it later. Before I dismiss, I wanted to ask, there's a quiz at the end of every program. Questions. 2 questions for you. You don't have to answer me. But I'd like you to ask yourself the same questions I challenge myself with. Number 1, what is the boldest thing you've ever done for Christ? And then number 2, how long ago was that? And the challenge, folks, for myself, and I offer it to you, is to never be satisfied with either answer.